done some videos within the Spanish series that have been kind of focused on specific categories or groupings of words. In the past, we've done things like tenses of verbs and how those verbs conjugate and things like that. But I wanted to maybe take a look at something that had kind of piqued my interest recently, just as far as Spanish itself and the way that it has evolved over time and the way that it is spoken in different parts of the world. And just kind of going out on a limb, I guess you could say, and thinking that if this is something that interests me about Spanish, it might interest you all too. So today, what we'll be talking about within our Spanish series is Spanish dialects. Spanish dialects. I was scared there for a second that my pen was not going to work, so I'm glad that worked out. As a real quick aside before we get started, thank you to those of you who have subscribed. We're almost at the recording of this video, we're almost at 300 subscribers, which whenever I'd first gotten started, if you told me that 30 people would be interested in what I post on a day-to-day basis, I would have been thrilled. So thank you to all of you who subscribed, those of you who have liked these videos. I know that promotes it within the algorithm so that other people who may also be interested in these kind of videos can come across them as well. Sometimes you're subject to the algorithm, despite what people who say that they can hack YouTube continue to contend. But that out of the way, we will go ahead and get started here with our content regarding Spanish dialects. Now, I guess one thing that is a couple things that we can talk about here just to get started is the idea that language is social. And what that means is that it is impacted by a variety of factors. And those factors could be the history of the city, the location of the city. If it's on a port, then there's going to be a lot of different people coming in from different parts of the world, potentially influencing the language to a greater extent. There can be if it's in a mountainous region and those people are kind of secluded and closed off, then certain offshoots of the language can kind of fold in on themselves, and an accent can develop a whole variety of different things that I think are very interesting. So the idea is language is social and it's impacted by a lot of different things. Wanted to highlight dialect versus accent. So a dialect, you can think more like vocabulary or slang or evolutions of the language itself, that it still maintains a certain level of intactness as a language. So it's still Spanish, it's identifiable as Spanish, but it could differ in a way from one region to another. So in a general sense, someone speaking Spanish in Mexico and North America should be able to understand somebody speaking Spanish in Spain, but there may be a pause on occasion where they realize, oh, we're speaking the same language, but it's kind of done in a different way. You could liken it to American English versus British English. Some of the slang that's included in there, we're speaking the same language. We can understand each other, but there's a difference in the dialect. Now, another difference, sticking with that example of British English versus American English, is the accent. The accent. So the way with which certain words are spoken can start to vary if the language is isolated unto itself for an extended period of time. How some of these accents have evolved over time may be lost to time, but based on some of what we'll go through here, there's kind of a variety of different factors, again, that kind of feed into the evolution in the languages that has taken place. Alright, setup is done. So let's go ahead and get into some of these dialects. So a subdivision that we have for one is North American, or U.S., or, as it can be described, Mexican Spanish. And this is spoken by 41 million people. And it's identified by a certain level of regional slang. that's the words that are the teenagers sometimes can set the culture with things like that. The next one I want to get into, the second thing, is European or peninsular Spanish. And this is known as peninsular Spanish because, for those of you who haven't looked back at a map of Europe in some time, Spain is on that kind of peninsular edge of Europe. Portugal and Portuguese are kind of doing their own thing on the western edge, but Spain is very much peninsular. Now, I'm going to go ahead and clarify a couple subdivisions of this European or peninsular Spanish. So one of those is Castilian Spanish, and that is in north central Spain. It's known by some as the original Spanish. So this would have been the Spanish that Cortez carried to the Americas and things like that. And it is via Latin. And a real quick aside, if those of you who have never heard this before, the Romance languages. These are all languages that are via Latin. And those are English, Spanish, French, and Italian. So these four languages often carry a few things together. They will share words, and sometimes there will be cognates between them, as we've seen between English and Spanish in our comparison so far. So the original via Latin, this lumps back into that. Another subset of this European and Peninsular Spanish is the Andalusian Spanish, and that is southern Spain, influenced by the Moors, Moors. For those of you who maybe aren't brushed up on who the Moors are, the Moors, well, I'll make a little note over here. Moors. They were North African peoples. They were culturally Muslims. Interacted with southern Spain. So, I don't remember the specific Arabic word, but I do want to give just an example of a word that I always thought was funny, and when I learned this, it clicked. It made a lot of sense. So, the Spanish word for sugar, English is sugar, in Spanish is azúcar. In Spanish, azúcar. And this word comes from the Arabic word, it's asakar. And someone could correct me in the comments as to how specifically it's spelled, but that is a word that was pulled from Arabic into Spanish, and it still has a presence there today. So that's an example of Andalusian Spanish that really has bled into modern Spanish, and it's from the interactions of those people. And it is also identified, so I'll put ID'd by, and that's there's a use of ustedes versus vosotros. And ustedes, just as a reminder, is kind of like a you all, or if you're a southerner in the United States, y'all. So for you all. Okay. Next on our list here is Murcian Spanish. Murcian, Murcian Spanish. That's southeast Spain. And it is identified, so I'll put ID'd again, by intonation. So how words are said, how they come out of the mouth of speakers by intonation and speech patterns. Intonation and speech patterns. All right, next is Canarian Spanish. And you can think with that like Canary Islands. So in my mind, I would almost kind of define this as like tropical Spanish. And this is courtesy. So courtesy of immigrants or slaves. If we're keeping it real here, immigrants and slaves who spoke Andalusian Spanish. So number 4 is an offshoot of number 2. I guess I'll put a little arrow. An offshoot of number 2. And then there's actually a branching underneath Canarian Spanish, and that is going to be your Caribbean Spanish. And that is ID'd by consonantal. So consonants. You all know consonants, I hope. Consonantal weakening. Consonantal weakening is one of the identifying characteristics of Caribbean Spanish. So we've got Murcian Spanish, Canarian Spanish, and Caribbean Spanish as an offshoot off of that. And then a large branch over here. I guess I could have subdivided, so we'll go ahead and take North American out of here to a certain extent. So this would be more U.S. and Mexican, the more I look at my notes here. Last is going to be Latin American Spanish. And this is a large swath of people. And that's going to comprise Central America. It's going to include parts of Mexico. It's going to include Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. And this is, I'll just put a note in here, very similar to U.S. and Mexican Spanish, which makes sense, the proximity. I'd have to do some more digging as to, what the definable differences between them are, but for the sake of this video, maybe in another video we could dig into it, but, especially if it's of interest to you all. But a subset of this Spanish, this Latin American Spanish, is called Rio Platense. And it's identifiable in Argentina and Uruguay. And this is a how to explain this one? This one is impacted by cultural interaction. Post World War II, there was a large number of German people who defected from Germany and its Nazi regime into Argentina and some into Uruguay. Same can be said for Italy. These were two countries that lost the war. So we'll put Italian and German just as a note here. So post-World War II, these were losing entities. So whether those were people fleeing political crimes or war crimes, or people looking to just escape the regimes that were in place. So with Italy, it would have been Mussolini, and with Germany, there's, obviously Hitler. But, looking to escape those regimes that impacted the language and created what's known. It's created. I looked it up. It's called Scheismo. shengismo. And it is a pronunciation of double L's and Y. Double L's and Y with a j sound. So, whereas in standard Spanish, that double L sound, key, so we'll just do llaves. So key is llaves. In standard Spanish, that's going to be, or in your other parts of the world Spanish, that's going to be llaves with a Y sound. So like llaves. Now in this sheísmo, kind of, it'll carry a J sound, so it'll be llaves. Llaves. And it is a very different experience trying to exchange information or understand people who speak this type of Spanish. You almost think it's a different kind of language. But I think that this is a pretty good summary of what I wanted to share with you all. So you've got your U.S. Mexican Spanish, your European or Peninsular Spanish with the subsets of Castilian and Andalusian. You have your Murcian Spanish, your Canarian Spanish with the subset of the Caribbean Spanish, and then your Latin American Spanish, which give rise to the Rio Platense, the very interesting subset of those other languages. So this is a fun topic for me, because another thing that I'm interested in addition to the things that I share with you on this channel, and if you're interested in videos beyond just Spanish, you can check it out. We've got Bible readings for those of you who are interested in the Bible, and we also have videos about the human anatomy, just kind of the things that I'm interested in right now. But I'm potentially going to launch a history series in the future, so if that's something you'd want to see, let me know. But for now, I think we'll go ahead and draw this video here to a close. Thank you all for taking the time to watch. I hope it's something you enjoyed. And I will keep you all posted with the latest and greatest when it comes to the content I'm putting out. Appreciate you all taking the time to watch. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. We will. See you soon.